270 and 44 are the amount of chapters and episodes of Nanatsu no Taizai I've read or seen, respectively. Do I like Nanatsu no Taizai? No. I mean, it's not bad, but for God's sake, I'm not even caught up with Berserk yet. There certainly are much better fish in the sea. Now, do I like Escanor?
Yes!
Escanor is Nanatsu no Taizai's crown jewel. He's the reason I read the series, and the reason I still am reading the series. In my view, everyone else are just side characters, and any part without Escanor might as well just be filler. He has become something of a fan favorite, and for good reason. A day doesn't go by without me thinking of this muscle-clad sun god. So trust me when I say there's no one else more qualified to be telling you why you should be praising the sun. That being said, discussing Escanor is a much different endeavor than talking about most popular characters in media. This is because he's flat, one-dimensional, and very simplistic. All of these are terms usually lobbed at properties in a demeaning or critical sense, which they have the right to be. But here's a word of wisdom. There exists no inherently bad label when it comes to art or entertainment. Usually a fictional character is valued by how complex or multifaceted they are. The general consensus nowadays is that characters who are more true to life, or at least more fleshed out, are vastly superior than those who are not. This is why things that are praised in characterization are things that allow one to sympathize or empathize with said character more, like motivations or internal and external struggle. This is a very simplistic and inadequate way of looking at characterization. It may be the trend nowadays, and maybe for good reason, but human history is littered with characters who are very simplistic, but that simplicity allows them to express a certain purity in their substance. This was especially prevalent in mythology, where the point of characterization was to encompass a few related ideas. The benefit of designing characters like this is it allows them to be much more accessible and much more focused. Part of the reason why Escanor has been able to elicit this visceral reaction is because of that simplicity. To be honest, this video is kinda redundant, because if you don't already like Escanor now, I don't think anything I could say will change that. He's an open deck. That being said, this isn't to say that there isn't some meat on his bones, like some other pieces of wet cardboard I know. A big risk of resting your character off one defining trait or idea is if you don't properly convey that idea, it will result in a hollow husk of a character that will be greeted with complete apathy or disdain. Thankfully for us, I think Escanor's characterization is top-notch. So much so, it actually works against the series. I mean, I'm not kidding when I say I've lost all interest in everything about this series except Escanor. But without further ado, let me tell you why you should be praising the sun at least 4 times a day. Hey kids, you know what's more important than arbitrarily assigning a level of strength on top of a fictional character? Or even trying to fit that fictional entity onto some sort of tier list in which you rank that character in comparison to other fictitious characters? Understanding and discussing the thematic and narrative purpose behind that character's strength. Escanor's strength certainly plays a role in his allure, but it's much smaller than I think a lot of people think. Strong fictional characters, or overpowered characters, don't necessarily make for good characters, because all things considered, the source of a character's strength is oftentimes more important. How a character is strong can often highlight a symbolic idea or express a portion of that character's ethos. The reason there can be such hyper-specific genres like mecha or mahou shoujo is because simply having a bunch of giant-ass robots or obnoxiously dressed girls fighting can actually be thematically deep. So what does this have to do with our boy Escanor? Well, Escanor stands out from the rest of Nanatsu no Taizai's cast, and in fact a lot of shonen characters, because of the purity and boldness of his power.
Sunshine!
His power makes it so his abilities are always connected to the position of the sun. During the night he's powerless, and during noon he's invincible. His character design is all made out to drive the point home that he's basically a moving solar panel. His amber-colored hair, his sin tattoo being a lion, the one animal that head-on could kinda look like a sun, and most of all his humongous muscles, because the sun is not only powerful, but bold. The sun is one of the most basic human symbols. I mean, we say praise the sun as a meme now, but you forget, as a race, we've probably been doing that for longer than we've been wiping our ass with paper. or just period. The sun embodies divine, life-given, and absolute power. If to juxtapose the sun with a fictional character or mythological character, it's often because you're trying to build that character into a paragon of strength and power. The sun has always been used in storytelling as a manifestation of divine power or greatness. And Escanor's power, Sunshine, is meant to embody that. It's a fitting power for someone who calls himself the one who stands atop all the clans, because it parallels the fact that the sun stands atop the world, and all it has to offer. The strength of this symbol can bring about a visceral reaction, for obvious reasons. The sun has played a crucial role in the growth of humanity. It either burned and deprived us, or protected and nurtured us. It is both bold, divine, and magnificent. You learn that every time you step outside on a hot summer day. So it is obvious that humanity would admire it for its power and think it divine. The sun has the same sort of pull on us that beauty does. And Escanor is the sun's perfect embodiment, at least when it comes to power. He surpasses every character in Nanatsu no Taizai in all ways. Unlike how it was before, where each sin and each clan had their thing, like Diane and the giants excelled in strength, and King and the fairies excelled in magic. Escanor, being the divine figure he is, was shown to be stronger in all forms, whether it be magic, strength, or spirit. He wins his battles not with skill, or simply by the skin of his teeth, but with overwhelming power. I mean, if Escanor has taught me anything, it's, yeah, killing a fly with a sledgehammer is a little much, but damn is it cool. Escanor is an attractive character for many, and has garnered a fervent fanbase for two reasons. First being his dialogue and mannerisms, which usually come in the form of short but elegant displays of gusto that are littered before, during, and after his battles. To put it in simple terms, he talks smack. And does he talk some good fucking smack? I mean, for being a guy who literally beats his enemies by roasting them with the sun, the worst burns are always verbal.
Sweet dollar tea from McDonald's.
Yep.
I drink that. Super hot fire. I spit that.
自分より弱い者に憎しみを抱くはずがないでしょ
On top of this, he has this consistent, no fucks given attitude. It's kind of a running gag at this point in shonen series to have characters be super surprised when anything remotely impressive happens. This is such an established trend that it's basically an instant meme for anyone in anything to even begin to utter the words
NANI? NANI?
Nani?
Now, the original no meme purpose for this is to cue the audience to be surprised, as well as to build a feeling of suspense. These moments of weakness can really do a number on the image of a character being invincible, because it's a clear moment of weakness. This is partly why Escanor is such a breath of fresh air. This guy is unfazed by just about everything. He breaks the formula by being so incredibly prideful, he will not allow himself to be bested in any way, shape, or form, even mentally. Now obviously simply being confident isn't enough. He needs the power to back it up. For it's the intersection of those two things that makes up his sin. Pride. Surprise, surprise, the character with pride in his name in a series called 7 Deadly Sins is prideful. That being said, this begs the question. What exactly is pride? Proud people and proud characters are often hit or miss due to a lack of a proper understanding of what exactly pride is. Pride is an idea that for about the last century has gotten quite a bad rap and has been subverted. One of those subversions is the very name of this series. The 7 Deadly Sins, or the 7 Cardinal Vices, are 7 failures of character decreed by the Christian faith. And for the most part, I don't have any issue with it. It's very easy to argue that an excess of wrath, sloth, envy, lust, gluttony, greed are faults in character, but pride is much harder to argue for. In fact, before the Christian faith became as widespread as it is, the general consensus was that pride was a virtue, not a sin. It was the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle who labeled it in the Nicomachean Ethics as being the crown of the virtues. For clarification, the Nicomachean Ethics was a text in which Aristotle, among other things, outlined 12 virtues he thought would be conducive for the good life. He also thought it was important for us to be able to view and admire those virtues in others. And just as we could admire those virtues in real people, it is possible to admire those virtues even more so in idealized fictional depictions. But first we have to identify those qualities and sort away the baggage that comes with it. One of the biggest confusions is thinking pride is just a positive connotation of arrogance. Pride is often confused with arrogance. Both evaluate oneself highly. The difference is fundamental though. Pride is rational evaluation of oneself. Arrogance is not. Pride requires one to think highly of one's accomplishments and abilities. But the accomplishments and abilities need to be worthy of the praise. Without them matching, the false pride will lead to self-hate when reality undermines the attempted illusion. If one's abilities are not as good as one would like to pretend, it's just a matter of time before they are genuinely tested, and the results will destroy the flimsy self-esteem. This misunderstanding is usually the failure of most so-called proud characters in media. Arrogance is far from a likable trait. Escanor does not fall into that pitfall. His self-esteem is always proportional to his abilities. During the night he lacks any pride at all, then he gets a spike at sunrise and it continues to grow until noon. So at no point in the day is he too boastful to be called arrogant. Neither is he humble. On top of this, Escanor lacks a lot of the negative qualities that are satcheled with pride. For instance, nothing about the definition of pride requires one to be discriminatory towards others, and neither is the proud above some altruism. When it comes to fiction and reality, a lot of proud characters are hated because they apply the weird rhetoric that they're great not because they're exceptional in their own right, but rather that everyone around them are just awful. They see where they are as the standard, and anyone below them are below average instead of viewing themselves as above average. This weird way of seeing the glass half empty is less than optimal when it comes to being likable. Lucky for us, Escanor is on the other end of that line. He doesn't disparage others, rather he uplifts himself, as well as not allowing his pride to stop him from being somewhat of an altruist or just a good friend. All in all, a great dude. But now it's time to bring it full circle. We've identified Escanor's admirable or praiseworthy trait as being pride. So now the only question to answer is, why is pride admirable? Or to memify that statement, why should you praise the sun? We admire pride because we envy it. Pride, from its very name, is concerned with greatness. The proud are great in all things, they're symbolic of strength both physically and mentally. While we can root for the underdog because we can sympathize with them, the proud demand respect. They have the abilities which almost seem to defy humanity. This is why Escanor's power is made out to be of divine quality. This is made even greater by the fact that he is human. We don't think it as great for a god or demon or giant to be superhuman, precisely because, well, they're not human. Part of the reason why Escanor can be so prideful is because of how Natsu no Taizai levels humans in comparison to the other races, as the weakest. And yet Escanor overcame those boundaries and became something godly, despite his human blood. It is revealed later that his power does have origin in the goddess clan, but I don't think that ruins his character at all. In many ways, I suspect Escanor could have been modeled from the Greek and Roman hero Hercules, a man turned god. Hercules is impressive and became as prevalent of a symbol because despite his human origin, he could bear the power of a god. And I think Escanor is the same, yet even more impressive, since he is still to our knowledge 100% human. So basically, the Holy Knights need to catch up. You know, analyzing fictional characters is really something of an endless hole. Expressing my love for a fictional character is hard, because like a love for real people, it is really hard to boil it down to just words, without getting too tangled in myself. To tell you the truth, I had the 2,000-word script for this video I had to scrap before I got to this one. It just got a little bit too wishy-washy, and I did a little bit too much grandstanding for a series with rampant sexual assault and pedophilia. But I think it boils down to this. We use fictional characters and media in general to try to probe out into the world, to try to find what's good, true, and beautiful, to help us construct identities of our own. I've always been a guy who never really clicked with sympathetic characters. I wanted characters I could admire. And something about the simplicity of Escanor's mannerisms and attitude really clicked with me. Pride in all things is something that should be strived for. One should strive to be prideful. As simple as that sounds, seeing that message is a lot stronger than hearing it. and I think that's just great. Escanor is an amazing fictional character, and I think his inclusion was worth all the time I spent in the 7 Deadly Sins. He's a character that really shines and always takes up the spotlight whenever he appears. He has certainly earned his spot in my heart for now, and hopefully in yours too. Good night.